So thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you everybody for joining us today, for being brave and attending obviously the inaugural conference. We're delighted that you're able to be here with us, and particularly happy to welcome four auspicious panelists to the stage. Particularly the two sponsors who've helped to set up the conference for us. The panel we're going to cover as an opening, setting the scene session, first of all, is going to look particularly at the landscape for wholesale SMS and messaging. The format will be a roundtable discussion. I'll prompt some questions to the panelists, but allow them also to interchange views amongst themselves. We'll talk for maybe 30 minutes or so, but feel free to raise a hand or chip in. We'll try and reserve 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the panel for questions directly from the floor. If you do ask questions, please just let us know your affiliation when you ask the question before you ask the question. Okay. As Vanessa said, I represent Arthur D. Little. We're a strategic and management consultancy. We work globally, and I head the telecoms and media team. There's plenty more information in the packs and on our website. I won't say any more about the company. So I'd like to hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves. Maybe the best way is just work from my right. So Perry, would you like to go first?
Morning, everyone. Perry Offer, CEO of Dialogue Group. Been involved with the company on and off for 10 years, and in various different roles, but for the past 18 months as CEO. What I'm basically doing with the company is shutting down a lot of the stuff that we're never going to monetize and focus our energies into the stuff we are going to monetize. The reason that we're here today is to talk about what I'd call a patch of blue sky strategy, which is to take an existing industry framework and to identify patches of blue sky amongst the cloudy sky that we can all capitalise on, and all in doing so make more money for ourselves. So looking forward very much to the debate.
Thank you, Perry. Now, many people in the audience will be aware of Dialogue and what you offer, but maybe just one or two lines on exactly your positioning or what you offer to the market, for those who haven't.
Well, we've been around for a long time, but we spent a lot of our time and energy in the first 19 years of our existence dabbling in stuff that was never really going to make us a great deal of money. Our sole focus now is A2P. Right? We are specialists in it. We don't do anything else. We don't intend to do anything else. And basically we think in terms of the market trends that are emerging, growth of the market, increased importance of security, increased importance of reliability, and every forecast you read around the world says A2P is going to be this huge opportunity over the next 4 to 5 years, despite the potential threat of apps. Then we're trying to position ourselves to create value, both for operators and customers, so that we can help them realise the value of SMS as a channel. As I said a moment ago, make more money for everyone.
Thank you very much. So let's test that in the panel. So if we move on to James.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's James Lasbury. I work for Telefonica. I'm the global lead for wholesale SMS. So absolutely delighted to be here and be in the first conference focused on A2P SMS. Similar to Perry, my role is focused just on A2P. And it's bringing together all the parts of Telefonica Group who largely play a pivotal role in the market, working with the aggregators and the brands to try and bring about value to our customers. So I've been in the A2P market for 5 years, originally ran the UK business, who deal with many of you, I imagine, here today, but are now responsible for Latin America, UK, Germany and Spain.
Thank you. So A2P again and a very global perspective. Rajdip, would you like to?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rajdip, and I lead the company called as Root SMS Solutions Limited. We are a 10 years old company, and most of you guys are aware of Root SMS. And we being based in India, and we are focused on emerging market as India, China, and Africa. And to be just share that we process more than 1 billion SMS a month. That's our capacity, and we are looking forward to get into voice. And we are now normally known as a messaging and voice API company, and that's it.
Thank you, Rajdip. Okay, and finally, Neil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Neil Roberts. I think I win the prize for the longest job title on the board, stretching over to 2 lines. So I'll try and compensate for that with the shortest introduction. I've been with mBlocks for just under 2 years. I run the commercial operations side of the business, so routing, pricing and procurement. mBlocks is focused in the messaging space very heavily in A2P wholesale bulk messaging, having exited from premium SMS some short while ago. Prior to mBlocks, I was the commercial owner for the SMS product line within Vodafone UK, where I dealt with both premium, wholesale, and also the advertising, and was involved in the early negotiation stages of the Weave joint venture.
Thank you very much. Okay, so a couple of very interesting roles for Neil. So let's kick off with talking about the landscape first of all. Already growth has been alluded to, and obviously there's a lot of volume growth within the market. But could we start maybe by asking where you see the main challenges for growth in the market? Do you see consistent volume growth and consistent revenue growth in both SMS and A2P, or do you see volume growth but limited revenue growth? What's the relative balance of the mix of volumes versus revenues?
So at Telefonica, there's a lot of speculation about the growth in A2P. So we did a piece of research with Accenture that we commissioned over the last 6 months. The rationale for that research was to understand the market in more detail and understand the segments that were growing. And I can share with you a few of the facts around that. So in the next 3 years, what is very clear across all of the markets was that there was growth in A2P. And I think we all understand that. And that's growth in volume, but also once the pricing reaches a point that it plateaus, growth in the actual revenues that can be made from this market. If we look at the core markets for Telefonica, and that's where the study focused, Latin America, it saw strong double-digit growth, so between 18 and 19% in the likes of Argentina and Brazil. And in Europe, across UK, Spain and Germany, around about 6 to 8% growth, which is strong considering the maturity of the markets.
Absolutely, and that's revenue growth, not volume growth.
That's revenue. That's revenue growth. The actual volume growth is much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, and you alluded to pricing and pricing pressure. So, and the potential for a plateau or a moderation in price pressure. How far away do you see that?
It depends wholly on the markets. I think from a UK perspective, we're reaching a point where it's plateauing, at a point similar to the interconnect in Spain and Germany. Those markets, we're still seeing quite a lot of fluctuation and change, and I think we'll continue to do so. In Latin America, those markets from a maturity perspective, although they offer similar services and the platforms are similar, I think there's a lot to be done in terms of removing the likes of fraud, illegitimate routes, SIM farms, etc., which will then lead to some stability thereafter.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Is that view and that forecast for the market consistent with the views of the other panelists? Would somebody else like to comment?
I mean, certainly I'd concur with the growth in volumes. We see volume growth in the region of 10 to 20%, depending on the individual markets that you go into. Although I think my boss has a higher view looking at my target for next year. He's expecting some more considerable growth. I think where the challenge is, and it was alluded to there, is around the price pressure. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is difficult for brands to understand is the variance in price based on destination. So historically, there's always been an association with the interworked fees and the value of a message to the customers. And I'm not necessarily sure that you can defend that position on a global scale when you have such variance in interwork fees. But certainly the growth in the volume, and I think we're continuing to see pressure on the revenue. So the revenue per messages across many markets are declining. It's the trend is bucked in some for various reasons that I'm sure we'll come on to, but volume growth, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I need to add this, like we're talking about Latin America and Europe as a one market, but I think we should also consider as Asia market as a big market. Like I'm from India, and I know about 4 billion SMS sent, A2P SMS sent every month in India itself. If you combine India, China and Africa, I think over 10 billion SMS, A2P SMS sent every month. So that's a market where the volume is very high, and we do see pricing is now stabilized over there, and we do see a very high revenue as far as the volume is concerned. So there is a growth and volume, both the side, in revenue and volume in Asia market. And that's the most, I think we need to now actually think about overall market as a 3 different markets: high risk, low risk and no risk. So India is where I think India and Asia is a market where we have A2P and P2P both can grow together. Still, because of the people don't have the smartphone the way people have in Europe. So I think the volume is definitely growing in A2P segment, and we all need to focus more on A2P side, because I belong to the company which focus more on A2P side of business. But volume wise, if you see Europe, yes, there's a growth, but Asia and Africa could be the next market for the rest of the guys to focus on.
Okay, thank you, Rajdip. And so definitely also in some markets, some other markets, there's still resilient growth in P2B, the later adopting markets. Fantastic. Parry, would you like to add anything on market volume?
Yeah, I mean, volumes are one thing, but money's another. I'm not into unprofitable growth. I think the key to all of this is, no disrespect to this man here, but this is all in the hands of the operators. And I would say a couple of things. Given that this is going out on film, I'm happy to invite the CEO of every operator in the world to get a whiteboard and sit down with his CFO one afternoon and just do a session that looks at the interconnectedness of revenue and profit streams. And to take a step back and learn some things from that. Because, they're all sitting there congratulating, we've sold a load of Sims this month for a shed load of money. Yeah, but they're all in the back of some van driving around between masts and they're destroying your A to B revenues. What's the point? Right? So the kind of growth I want to see in the marketplace is driven by a growth of knowledge amongst the operators themselves, that you have this problem and it's within your power to do something about it. Do we honestly see a future on an industry based predominantly on fraud? No. Right. But then, given that you understand that you've got this opportunity, please don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg by setting a price up there and decimating the volume. So I notice on the next seminar, that's one of the points that's going to be discussed, and I'll be sitting in on that seminar because I think that is key to it all, given that you've taken them through the journey of their understanding now being in place that says, we have this problem, but you know what, we don't have to change much to do something about it.
Thank you very much. So yeah, absolutely. I think fraud and revenue protection is as important as finding a way to monetize from the customer perspective. Obviously, I'm going to bounce this question towards James, as is the operator on the panel, although you're not the CEO, so don't feel obliged to
thankfully
to return the view.
So it's fair. It's a fair comment. I think the decisions operators need to consider are balancing those between the consumer demand and when speaking to aggregators in the market who really are dealing with customers every day and really understand what is going on in terms of the demand and the price point, what we see is a demand for competitiveness. And from a consumer perspective, it's that competitiveness that's driven this data demand, which ultimately has undercut and created an industry for the likes of the SIM farms. What Telefonica is now doing systematically is trying to quantify that issue in each of our markets, and we're going through a process. So our number one priority globally for A2P is removing fraud. We started that in the UK to share some results. The UK started blocking international fraud, and they saw the volumes increase from illegitimate routes to operator traffic, so on-net traffic for Telefonica, by about 22%. This is a mature market, so 22% growth over a couple of months demonstrates the issue that Perry's talking about. I think we need to distinguish between operators setting rates and rates that are set by illegitimate routes, because they're not the same thing. And therefore, operators will work with the interconnect rates and provide a good service to aggregators, who in turn provide the right service to brands. There are aggregators and people in the market that we know that are using illegitimate routes. As Telefonica and then work with the other operators to remove these, that will ultimately force the right price point to allow our partners to be competitive in the market. So.
Okay. I know that Telefonica is in a way rearranging the way in which you manage A2P and messaging globally, so helping to moving towards a more consolidated model of governance for it, and some of the other operators are doing similar. Do you think that will help towards alleviating this problem? Is it something which was more possible because of the national governance of these services?
So are you talking about global frameworks across the whole of our footprints?
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think it will help sharing best practice with markets like LATAM.
Okay.
Because they, from a maturity cycle, although they'll get there a lot quicker, the mature markets like the UK and Spain, they need their help in terms of understanding the steps that they need to take. I think ultimately it comes down to the local markets who understand those local conditions to work with the partners and provide the right service to those customers. So in going to countries like Brazil and Mexico, if you were to go there and say, well, right, we're going to do exactly the same as Spain have done in the UK, you wouldn't last 2 minutes. You need to be respectful of the way their market operates, but at the same time recognise best practice.
Okay. Let's, before we close on this topic, I'll just also open it to Rajdip and Neil. Is there anything other value chain participants can do to try to alleviate this problem aside from the operators, or is it solely the responsibility of the operators in your view?
We cannot say that it's solely responsibility of operator itself. Like we aggregator also play a big role, to monetize our traffic. Like most of, like if we say there's a fraud or there's a legitimate route available in the market, maybe someone like us or maybe somebody in the aggregator business doing that thing. So it is indirect impact on the operator, but operator also needs to think about option where I think Vodafone and Telefonica, they got a global hub now where they are offering this kind of services to connect multiple aggregators, and I think it's a good sign. And if we get good quality services and good, like most of the enterprise segment are looking out for direct connects, and I think the next future is going to be the direct connects, and no more SS7 route going to work or help aggregators anymore. So most of the aggregators are going to focus more on direct connects to serve the enterprise segments, especially like Google, WhatsApp, whatever you want to say that.
I think that the key challenge is both education within the operators and the entire business system within the operator and the appetite for that education. Because the challenge is, and it was something that I was very cognizant of when I was at Vodafone, you will have different divisions with different targets and therefore different focuses. So you would have an enterprise salesperson who would be very excited that somebody wanted to buy 1,000 SIMs at £8 a month, and better still, they didn't even want to use the data or the voice minutes. All they wanted was the 5,000 SMS. And they thought that that was a really positive thing for the business because they're saving on data, they're saving on voice, and what they don't realise is for £8 worth of revenue, they can rack up £80 worth of costs. And the whole ecosystem of SMS within the UK amongst the operators relies on reciprocity, because the operators have made the value of an SMS zero in real terms. If you're a consumer, you have unlimited SMS thrown into your bundle. Voice is going the same way. Voice is becoming unlimited and thrown in the bundle, which leaves them with data. But to go back to the SMS piece, and until you get the operators understanding that, and once you get that level understanding it, you've then got the MVNOs who sit beneath on the same network with the same offers, and if they don't police those aspects, then you're going to have a devaluation of the A2P market. And I think that there's two levels as well, because there's fraud and there's abuse of a system that is different to fraud in my mind. So the blocking and filtering is very good in terms of legitimising all of the traffic, but that needs to be done in a very controlled manner so that the customer experience doesn't divert people. And to Perry's point earlier, we then need to be cognizant, because some operators block and filter and then the price is very high. And if that extends, then what you do then is invite over the top players.
Correct.
Because if it was £1 a message, everybody would find an alternative way of doing it. So that's the challenge, I think. And as Perry's point said, the operators are very much in control of that, but we need to engage with them from our community and assist in that education. Because I think that it's, for one man, it's a big job, right?
Yeah, I think I just need to add to this. Like recently, Grameen Phone Bangladesh has just added a filter, and they increased the price by 100 times, So operators should also think about what kind of pricing they're going to get in the market. So I think operator needs to focus on that. You cannot just increase price to 100 times or 200 times. Let the aggregator, because we got some certain client base which works on a certain pricing, So be logical in the market when you do a pricing. So there are operators who are taking initiative to give up aggregator or define a set of aggregator who can sell their A2P routes. But recent updates in Asia, I think it's going to create more loss of volume to the operator.
Okay, yeah. So you need to be careful if you introduce a new cost element that disrupts the existing value flows. Just before we move off this topic, the other thing I wanted to pick up on was the comment about the alleviation of price pressure. Can we just identify where that alleviation is coming from? Is that because of regulation? Is that a reduction in the level of competing providers? Is it because the price has fallen so low we're getting close to the marginal cost of production? You know, what's causing the plateau?
So largely it's driven by the interconnect in the local countries. I think there's a balancing act. So I'd say for a start, the operator doesn't set the price 100 to 200 times higher than it needs to be. We try and work with the aggregators to understand the right market rate. The second thing I'd say is it's very dangerous to push the pricing too low. So clearly SMS has a strong value and A2P does have a strong value in each of the markets in which we operate, and we're seeing strong growth in particular segments. We don't want to see A2P go the same way as P2P, because then spam, the value of the message will actually deteriorate. So actually there's an obligation amongst both the aggregators and the operators to keep the value there for the customer. Because if SMS and A2P messaging becomes like spam, this marketplace will be destroyed overnight.
Anybody else like to add anything on that topic?
No, I do agree with James. Like certain cases of operators have been taken. Like I'm talking about European operators have taken the very good initiative where the prices are maintained well. But I'm talking about the rest of other part of the world where operators are not taking this as a very serious thing. Like we based in India and we are working with China, India, Africa operators. Some of the African operators are not very. They don't understand the whole market scenario. That's the biggest problem with the African operators right now. So they should understand the actual requirement of the A2P guys, the aggregators, and I think that's a market. You know, where sometimes they all of a sudden a company from Europe just went to Bangladesh, they put a filter, and all of a sudden the prices got increased. The entire aggregator or the person who put the filter over there, they need to make sure that they take other aggregator in this confidence before they increase the price. You know, that was a thing. Like the way James said, that they always take a initiative for input from aggregators. So in Asia, I think this thing is not happening. So people should take that kind of input from aggregator before they can actually raise prices.
He's talking about us, by the way, because we got the exclusive connection. Oh no, look,
that's a point.
I made the point earlier.
Right.
The operators must not kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes you just sit in these meetings and you see dollar signs. And, you know, we were very clear about what would and wouldn't work. And there are further conversations to be had, in my view.
Yes, that's right.
So, no, I mean, because your point about consultation is well taken. We know what the market rates are because we've been in this game for a long time. You know, you've been in it for a long time. So we do know. But no, I think, again, for me, you know, in terms of pricing pressures, it's really about getting the operators on side with this kind of thinking. And, you know, the point was right there, you know, which is why I made the point about it's a CEO level discussion. Because until you get understanding at that level of interconnectedness, you're kind of trying to shovel water uphill, and that never bloody works, you know.
Okay, well, let's hope that we get the message out to the CEOs through the forum and all the people in the room today. Let's shift gears slightly and talk about technology for a moment. Maybe I'll turn particularly to Neil. I'm interested to know whether you anticipate any change in the technologies that support A2P and SMS going forwards, and to what extent that might change the customer experience. Obviously, some parts of the enabling technologies have been mature for a long time, but what change can we expect in the next few years on the technology?
So just before I come on to that, if I could just step back one to the previous value point, because the interesting thing for me is how we define the value of a message. If you go back in time, and you don't have to go too far back in time, then the price of messaging was above interconnect in various marketplaces. And then if you go back further than that, if you actually look at what SMS does and the channels that it's replaced, if you think about something as simple as your dentist giving you an appointment reminder. Now, you used to get a letter that had a stamp on it that somebody had put into an envelope and all the costs associated with that. So you'd be, you know, somewhere in the region of 70 pence to fulfill that letter. Then you replace that with an SMS, that does a much better job, some would argue, because it's more immediate and it's direct to the individual, whether they're at home, they're at work, and yet the value of that is considered much, much lower than the value of fulfilling it from that aspect. And the reason that the price pressure, in my opinion, is plateauing is because there used to be a much bigger margin between cost and price to the end user. And as markets mature, because you have abnormal profits within that sector, so more and more people join it. As more people join it, there's more competitive pressure. And the two lines move closer together. So the actual retail price gets closer to the cost price. And that's where you end up in a period of consolidation, which is where I think we're heading now. In terms of the technology that will deliver that, obviously if you look throughout the MNOs, if you fast forward to a world where we have complete 4G and it's the only bearer out there, then SMS as we know it doesn't exist anymore, because all messaging will be packet services. Do I think that's imminent? No. I mean, when I handed my notice in at Vodafone, I went to my boss and he said, "Where are you going?" And I told him I was going into an aggregator. He asked me if that was a sensible move. You know, was I really going into the right space, because that was a mature market, and where did I see the future? And I think there's a very strong future in SMS. I mean, I'm quite old, so
old, isn't it?
yeah, but you know, his eyes were very much focused on, and he was the business and strategy director, right? But his eyes are focused in other areas, as all MNOs are, because they're very, very big businesses, and bulk SMS is a very, very small revenue line within it.
Okay. Are there any specific technologies that you think will come and change the customer experience aside from native messaging in 4G?
No, I think that the platforms that deliver messaging from both an aggregator perspective and from an MNO perspective, in terms of SMS, don't have much scope for change, certainly on the MNO side. I mean, obviously platforms can get better at picking up issues with routes and the like, so they can be improved. But from an MNO perspective, it's a capacity-based issue, and they have that pretty much covered.
Okay. Rajdip, anything to add on from
I think
a
that's
routing perspective? Or?
No, I agree with Neil, because I don't see any application, because it's, again, we all connect over SS7, SIGTRAN or SMPP protocol, and which is going to remain the same. When the version of a protocol be changed from 3.5 to 3.4 to 3.5, that's it. I don't see a change from either side. Yeah.
Okay. And are the other panelists consistent with regard to the speed of transition towards 4G, so that there's still plenty of life in the other standards and a relative balance?
Yeah, I think it's not so much about new technology, it's about how you position what we've got. The value of the channel, there is this stat you can't get around, which is still that over 95% of people read their text messages bloody quickly, right? There's the value of the channel. Mission critical, time sensitive, high value information. Mm-hmm. Particularly in an age of increasing concerns about security and authentication. So what does that mean? Reliable delivery, fast delivery. So I think the spin is to use the technology that's out there to drive for faster and more reliable delivery and offer that as a proposition to people that really value it.
Thank you. And that touches on the additional value perceived by the customer that Neil was raising, in addition to just the nominal price or the retail price of the ATP message.
Yep.
Okay. Let's just move on to one final topic before we open to the floor. You mentioned then also security and hinted towards privacy from the customer perspective. To what extent do you see a change in the customer expectation or dynamic here? That, there's some growing awareness, at least in the press and in some dialogue, with regards to the level of security and privacy on OTT services, and consumers may be becoming a bit more aware about where the domicile of their data is and how their data might be used. Is that a real shift in customer perception, and could that potentially change the apps that people use, or is this more regulatory positioning and talk amongst the players, tension between the MNOs and the OTTs, and not so much from the customer perspective?
So I think, and it relates to your previous point, when we talk about A2P messaging, largely the format and the technology hasn't changed in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's because it works. Yeah. And it's because it's successful. And to Perry's point, SMS is basically the most successful communication type of its type, the most successful application, you could argue. When you talk about kind of the evolution beyond privacy, if you compare Brazil to the UK, for example, from a marketing perspective, they need double and triple opt-in. So marketing services, to Neil's point previously, if operators create enough friction in the market will find another way. And for marketing services, they have done that. So what we're looking at is how we actually change the market to, in a similar way to Europe operates, to allow a sensible level of opt-in where the brands are responsible for their customers. And ultimately, that's the way it needs to work. When you talk about new data services, I don't think we're at a point where location, data, content is being combined with A2P messaging. That offers a potential market, but a much smaller one when you look at the successful nature of bulk is because of the scale. So other points.
Okay. Would anybody like to add anything on the privacy point, or maybe how big data could be used to leverage the content within the messages?
I think certainly it's a concern amongst enterprises where the location of the data centres are. I mean, I think many people in the general public, they think their information is stored in the cloud, and they think the cloud is some ethereal thing that hangs around up in the air rather than it's a server located in a data centre somewhere. And that's because basically I think most people aren't that bothered so long as they don't see an impact to their bank account because their money's been sucked out through the channel. So I don't think privacy will impact on the over-the-top players. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, the fact that there are over-the-top players in their WhatsApp often gets spoken in terms. Now, they have a very clear statement that they're not interested in advertising through their channel. Now, whether that translates to they don't want to do A2P messaging at some point down the line, I mean, you've only got to look at the amount of money Facebook invested in acquiring them to realise that actually at some point there's got to be a return somewhere there, and it's not going to be from the revenue. But whether they do or not, you know, I think they're welcome. I can't see them ever having the ubiquity that the SMS through the MNOs has as a channel. So they'll simply become another channel for the aggregators to connect to and transmit messaging through to that particular set of clients. So I don't think data privacy is a barrier from the OTT players entering, and I think the marketplace should welcome that channel.
I mean, most of them are still doing their authentication via SMS.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that speaks volumes.
Okay.
No, I think whether it's regulatory driven or whatever, most people are getting used to the idea, and I think welcome that authentication is increasingly going to be part of their life. You go on holiday. I went on holiday to Portugal. All of a sudden, I've got to receive a load of authentication messages because I'm just logging into websites that I use back home, and I'm on a different IP address. Of course, then if you opt to receive the authentication message by text, you need it bloody quick because otherwise you're sitting there thinking, well, what the hell happened to that? And that's when the concerns do start to creep in. So I think whether we like it or not, consumers are going to be led to and welcome, I think, a world of great authentication.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, and because there's quite a few people here, I'm sure you have some burning questions. If anybody would like to kick us off, please raise your hand and give us your affiliation and then your question either to the panel collectively or to a particular member of the panel if you wish. Okay. Just 1 second. We have a mic so everyone can hear your question.
Hello, this is Sean Hockley from Bulletin. Look to the future and SMS. This is aimed at James initially, but to the rest of the guys up there as well. Do you see any interaction with SMS and machine to machine in the future? We know that machine to machine is going to be huge, and there's going to be tens of billions connection just in this country alone by 2020. Do you see applications being set up in the background for that?
Yes, I do. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities. If you look at the segmentation for SMS today, Perry's right, authentication represents about 22-23% of the market, followed by customer information and loyalty and awareness. If you look at home services, they're about 3% of A2P messaging today. That's what the Accenture study showed. There's a lot of latent